Hello, welcome to Southern Girl in the City. My name is Dominique Duarte, and I'm a singer actor who currently lives in Brooklyn, New York. And today's topic will be, along with my blog post, how to choose a college as a black student. Um, the first thing you want to think about is affordability. This was big for me personally. I collected a bunch of brochures from my freshman year all the way up to my senior year, and they were in my closet, and I had a box, and it had all of the different colleges that came to visit during lunch, and I had to take a brochure. And affordability was front of mind. I knew that I wanted to go to a school that was out of state. But one of the things that drew me to the college I ended up choosing was that they had a tuition discount for people who lived in Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and Tennessee. And so, because of that, that's what made me decide for real, to go to that school. I had chosen to apply to four schools, which to a lot of people is not a lot. But hey, when I went to Murray State, I actually found out that some people only apply to Murray State. So apparently, it depends on where you live. But at my high school, the guidance counselor suggested that I apply for 8 to 12 schools, which was a lot. And so my mom was just saying I should apply to four, which I thought was kind of limiting at the time, but honestly, it ended up being fine because I ended up getting into all four schools. I applied for a school in Detroit, Michigan. I think it's in Detroit, Wayne State University, because it had a decent theater program, but because at that point I wanted to major in theater and journalism. And then I applied for Columbia College Chicago for theater and journalism. I applied for University of Memphis because my mom made me. And then I applied for Murray State University. And I got accepted to all four schools. I think Murray State, I had gotten accepted by December of 2007. So I was very diligent about getting my applications in pretty early. I think by January I had already submitted for all my applications. So that's another thing. You might want to start early. Start as soon as possible. When you start applying, I would suggest it makes your life easier because by the spring you should just be worried about scholarships and financial aid. But by the fall, all the applications you should have them in. But think about the cost because student loans are no joke. I would suggest not taking out a student loan. Even if it's a few $1,000s, don't do it. Really avoid it because you think, well, I'll pay it immediately, but it's just not that simple. When you graduate, it is going to be a little more challenging than you think to get a job. And even if you do get a job, you have to pay for a mortgage or rent, and you have to pay all of these bills that come up in life. So you really don't have the financial backing, even if you're making a salary, to pay back the student loans. So think about, is this college affordable? If the tuition is extremely high, that's not great because that means that your room and board is going to be super expensive as well. If you can get a full ride scholarship, please, by all means, do that. The thing is if you're a freshman in high school, you really need to make sure that you start your academic journey well because a lot of seniors or juniors wait to the last minute to magically make their GPA higher. And it's like, no, you need to make sure that your GPA starts high. Because even if you have a slip up, well, at least you started well. But if you are coming in with a low GPA or you fresh by the end of freshman year you have a low GPA, it's going to be harder to recover from that. Even if you do improve, those 4 years make a difference. And really, your senior year doesn't really have much bearing on your acceptance into college. It's really your freshman, sophomore, and junior year that they're looking at. By senior year, you would have been applying, so then you wouldn't even have your grades in for the for the fall, and in the spring you wouldn't have those grades either. So they really are looking at your freshman, sophomore, and junior year. So if you're a freshman in high school or you're in the 8th grade and you're about to go to high school, from day one you need to take your education seriously so that you can get scholarships. I would also suggest taking an ACT prep course. Take multiple ACT prep courses. If you are not good at test taking, which I was not, I got a 21 on the ACT. I took it 3 times and I got about the same score. So I got a 19, I think a 21, and then a 22. No, I'm so sorry. I got a 21, a 19, and then a 20. And I think the only reason I got the high score was because I did the optional writing section because I'm a really good writer. So that is what got me a higher score. But I was terrible at standardized tests. I always had been. Ever since I was a child, I just didn't do well on tests. I was a phenomenal student, but when it came to them standardized tests, they whooped my behind. So you need to make sure that you're practicing for the ACT. I'm believing they're still doing the ACT. Maybe they're not. Because if they're not, then really your grades make them stand out. Also, make sure you're doing more than just grades. Make sure you're involved in your school in some type of way. If you're volunteering, if you're in Beta Club, National Honor Society, student government, do something. You got to be involved in your school because that is what makes you stand out as well. If you have good grades and that's it doesn't look that great because they don't think that you're well rounded. So you want to make sure that you have good grades, you have a decent ACT or SAT score, and that you are heavily involved in activities. I was in National Honor Society, I was in Beta Club, so I had to do service hours, so I had volunteer experience. I was in production, which meant I had multiple jobs at GHS TV as well as Poplar Pike Playhouse, the school's box office. I was the assistant box office manager and then the box office manager. And I had reports that aired on the local news, and I also had won 2 Emmys. But actually, that's the thing. I won the Emmys after I was already accepted to college. So that wasn't even something that I put on my college applications because I had already been accepted to college before I won the Emmys. But yeah, staying involved, making sure you get those ACT prep courses. Even if you are good at taking tests, just get it in, get in the practice because it really is test taking is a skill. You can study for the ACT, but the ACT is really a combination of all the things you know already. But it's the time test, it just wasn't working for me, especially on the math portion. I was botching it because I already take a long time to do my math tests. Even in class, I was like the last person to finish my tests. So for me to do a math test and be timed, it was horrible. But I still was able to get into college with the 21 ACT. But I definitely wasn't going to get into an Ivy League school. But I wasn't looking at Ivy League because I already knew it was out of my tax bracket. So think about affordability. Is this school going to be affordable for me so that I don't have to take out student loans? Am I going to be able to get scholarships at this school? Think about affordability. The next thing you want to think about is go on college visits, please. If you can afford to go on college visits, please, parents, take your kids on college visits. This might have been one of the biggest things that I should have done was go on college visits because I was accepted to college without going on a college visit to any of my schools. And it's necessary. Like, you need to go on college visits because you need to see what the campus is like. And I think that had I gone to visit Murray State, I'm not saying I wouldn't have gone to that school, but it would have showed me the demographic. Because seeing the demographic numerically is not the same as seeing it in real time. And in real time, I was in for a culture shock because I knew that I was going to be a minority at the school because I was a minority at my high school, but I didn't realize how drastic it was going to be, that I would be the only black girl in almost every class. That was different because at Germantown High School, I was not the only black girl in most of my classes. I was usually there at least be 5, maybe 10, sometimes half the class, depending on what type of class it was, because I didn't take that many honors classes. So when I was not in my honors classes, I was sometimes in my honors classes at Germantown. I was one of a few, but still wasn't the only. I was never the only at Germantown. I actually think my high school class was still one of the more predominantly black high school classes at Germantown High School at that time. Because the classes before us definitely were predominantly white. But I was like, I think that by the time we hit our senior year, our class, I think, had the most diversity. But anyway, I think going on a college visit also would have showed me what it's going to feel like to be the only on a regular basis. I was one of a few in high school, but in college it was a little bit of a culture shock. Even for me, who had been around a lot of white people, but I just was not expecting to be like, oh, you're the only on the regular basis. So it's nothing wrong with that. Honestly, it's not. But yeah, I would go on college visits. Just go on college visits. See what the school is like. See what the environment is like. I know that most schools are probably putting on their best whenever they have you come to the school. But even then, I think people can tell whether they like the school or not. Even when people are putting on their best, you can tell. I think that the friendliness about Murray State would have been a turn on to me. Like, I do think that because the people were so friendly, I do think that that would have been a plus. But I definitely wish I had gone on a college visit. The next thing you want to think about is do your research on colleges, one, but do your research on majors. This was a discussion I actually had with a friend who's also a black man, and he was saying that a lot of the times we didn't think outside of the box when it came to majors. White people have a lot more of a broader thought process, I feel like, when it comes to picking a major. They think of stuff that I didn't even think of. And it's like in the black community, it's like teacher, lawyer, doctor, engineer, nurse. And most black people are in one of these five categories. Like they are studying nursing, medicine, law, teaching, education, some type of education, or they are studying psychology. That's another one. It's just not as much variety. And most of the people that I know who I went to college with, who are black, are in those fields. They are in some type of education. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're in medicine, they are nurses. Um, yeah, there are more jobs than that. And I know now we're going into content creation more, but even taking content creation out of it, there were always a plethora of different majors you could have done. And I think that for black women in particular, a lot of the times math is our Achilles heel. We do struggle with math. Math was always my worst subject. I didn't know a lot of black girls who were really good at math. I did know that a lot of them were hardworking students, really good students, but I guarantee you a lot of them were better at communication and reading and writing than they were math. And I think that's why there was a big push for STEM to be put into the schools because minority students did not get as much exposure to math and science in school, or they didn't have the love for it. But I do think that we have to think outside of the box when it comes to jobs, because I think that part of the reason we struggle financially is because we work in fields that don't have much fruit financially. Most women that I know, black women, are teachers in some form. They are teaching, or they're nurses, which those careers make okay money. Teachers definitely don't make enough. I think nursing is pretty decent. But let me tell you something, that career, like, is hardcore. Also, if you study nursing, you probably not gonna finish in 4 years. Mainly because you have to get into the nursing program, and I don't think you can get in it until your junior year. So, and it requires a lot. So nursing is a really difficult major. It's not impossible, but just think research. Do your research. If you don't know what you want to do, research other career choices. Because I realize I have a love for mental health, and I just wish that I had thought more about that, because I might have minored in psychology, because I do have an interest in that. But I didn't know. I really didn't know what I was interested in. I knew that I love music, and I knew that I was good at it, and I knew that I was good at acting, but I really didn't know what to do other than maybe be a news reporter. And that was about it. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do outside of those things, and so I double majored in vocal music and journalism. I double majored, and journalism was supposed to be my backup plan, but journalism, Murray State is not really known for journalism like that. They're known more for writing journalism, but when it comes to television journalism, which was what I was trying to do, there were much better schools that I could have chosen if I was really serious about doing journalism. So you really have to do your research, because just because the college is offering the major does not mean that it is going to help you in your career. So you really have to do research. I had done a little research, because that's what made me change my major from theater to music. Because when I saw that the theater program didn't have accreditation, and I also, you didn't have to audition, that was like, I think I was just like, I think I want to study music instead, because I know the one that's I'm a stronger singer than I am an actor, and I think that the music program was much more established than their theater program was. Even though really it's a music ed program, because there were not many performance majors at Murray. Most of them were education majors, which there's a part of me that's kind of like, you could have studied music ed. But I didn't. I sometimes wish I had, but then I don't know, because I don't know if it was what I wanted to do. I still am not sure. But think outside of the box, because financially, think about the type of lifestyle that you want to have. Because if you want to be a teacher, you're going to be living on a frugal salary. If you want to work in business, know what type of business you want to work in. I think that in high school, I know it's hard to choose a career in high school, but if you're going to spend as much money as it costs to go to college, really put some thought behind your major. Put some thought behind it. Talk to people who you know, and talk to people who, now you have more resources than ever. You can go to YouTube, you can research careers, take some of those tests about what career you should do. But there are plenty of things you can do that are outside of the realm of medicine and law and education. Because those three fields, I mean, law definitely pays pretty well, but law school is also extremely expensive and difficult. And then same thing with medical. A lot of black people don't have a ton of wealth, so studying medicine is expensive as fudge. So you really don't always have the funds to study that. Because you can't just get a bachelor's. You have to get you have to go to medical school, and then you got to get into medical school, and that is not easy either. It's not impossible to be a doctor. I mean, I have a friend who's a nurse practitioner, and we went to high school together, but she also was very good in math and science. I don't know a ton of my black friends who were very good at math and science, But I mean, there was a couple of friends I had who said they want to be doctors. I know there's one girl I went to high school with wanted to be an anesthesiologist. She was really good at math and science. She was also good at performing. But math and science, try to expose yourself more to it, because I think the more lucrative careers are in the math and sciences. If you're in the arts or if you're in communication, you are going to make less. Um, you just are. It's just not as fruitful of a career choice. But that's if making money is a priority for you. For me, making money was not the priority. I wanted to make a living, but I didn't have to make a lot of money. But if making money is a priority for you and you would like to pay off your debt quickly, if you end up taking out student loans, then please, by all means, research, research, research. You need to research the colleges, research what majors they're known for, research other majors outside of the box of education, medicine, law, and engineering. Like, just think about what you want to study. There are a lot of different things to study. Don't stick yourself in a box. Um, think about the pros and cons of a PWI versus an HBCU. So, a PWI is a predominantly white institution. An HBCU is a historically black university and college. When I was looking at colleges, I really did not look at HBCUs at all. It wasn't intentional. I went to a white high school, so predominantly white high school, so they were not visiting my school like that. So didn't really see them enough. I think Lane came to our school during lunch. Maybe even my mom's college, I think, came. But Russ College in Mississippi. But I didn't really think about it at the time. Like, it just wasn't something I thought about, because at that point I was used to being in a predominantly white environment. So I didn't necessarily have to go to an HBCU. However, now that I'm 35 and there are definitely pros to going to an HBCU that I didn't think about. So, for instance, at the time that I was applying for colleges, sometimes I felt like I fit in more with the white community than I did the black community. And sometimes I felt like the black community made me feel like I was less than, because I wasn't the hippest, I wasn't into rap, I wasn't into other things that they're into, and I'm into musical theater. And so I sometimes just did not feel like I was black enough. And some of them would tell me that to my face. So, including some relatives. So, at the end of the day, I just didn't think that I wasn't black enough. So, I think too, at HBCU didn't appeal to me, because I was like, I ain't really fitting in very well with the black community at the time. However, when you go to college, your college professors end up becoming a part of your network, whether you realize it or not. And that was the aspect that I didn't think about. Because who's the one professor that I keep in contact with? My vocal teacher, who was a black woman. But I'm like, do I keep in contact with the other professors like that? No. So, what I realize is that when you're choosing a college, you need to think about your professors as well, because a lot of them have connections in the industry, or it doesn't even have to be the arts, it could be any major. They have connections, and they are your connection to getting jobs post college. I know that some of my peers had doors open for them because of the faculty at Murray, and I did not have that strong of a relationship with them, other than this particular professor, to really have that. So yeah, that was an aspect that I had not thought about. Um, as an adult, also, your circle is still predominantly black. Whether you grew up with white people or not, when you become an adult, your circle is going to more than likely still be predominantly black. So, even though in your early years you spent more time with white people, the likelihood of those relationships sustaining past a certain point is not going to necessarily happen. Um, I have worked with a ton of white people at work, but who I end up keeping up contact with post that job, because you know I haven't had a lot of jobs, ends up being the black women that I worked with. Um, Very rarely have I kept up with a white coworker. And neither was it reciprocated. So I'm not saying that people are being racist or whatever. That's not really it. I think we as human beings tend to gravitate towards people who are similar to us. And you need to build your community outside of just your 4 years in college. And I think that people who went to HBCUs have more of a community outside of their 4 years in college than I did. So, those friends, those relationships, those people that you went to your HBCU with, they're lifelong friends. And that is not always the case if you go to a PWI. So yeah, think about that prospect. Think about post college, because college is not just those 4 years. Your college experience is a catalyst for your community post college. And as a black woman, you need to find a black community in college, because that's your network. Those are the people who are going to open doors for you, and then your professors as well are people who can open doors for you, or at least be a community for you, in a way that white people, as much as I love them, don't always show up in that way. And I think it's because they already have a sense of community within their own families, which is amazing, but it also makes it harder, because you realize that the relationship just shifts and it changes a lot when you become an adult. Like, I'm not talking college adult, I'm talking adult. So think about the pros and the cons. I mean, one of the pros I thought about going to a PWI was that, well, most of the people I'm going to work with are going to be white. Kind of. In New York City, surprisingly, I'm still the only black girl, a woman, in a lot of my jobs, which is kind of crazy. But there's still diversity. It's just other minorities and white people. But in Tennessee, Kentucky, the places that I was working in, it was mostly black people that I was working with. So once again, even though I thought that I was going to be, I need to go to a school that is going to be like the world. But as a minority, you are still a lot of the times working in jobs with other minorities. Yeah. But there are, I mean, in theater in particular, I tend to be one of the onlys a lot of the times. But theater is a predominantly white field. It always has been. It always will be. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. one of the pros of going to PWI is you get to know white people on a deeper level. I think I got to understand them better. I think that by going to a PWI, you don't have as much prejudice, because I do think a lot of black people that I know have a lot of prejudice against white people because they feel like everyone's being racist. And I'm like, I don't think everyone is. I think sometimes it's a lack of knowledge and a little bit of ignorance, but it isn't always I don't like black people. It is I don't know or understand you, and if I talk to you and get to know you, then I'll get to have connection, and I will get to learn about your upbringing, because most of those people that I went to college with did not have much interaction with black people, and it wasn't by choice. However, I'm learning that as an adult, maybe there's a little bit of choice in there. But as a growing up, you can't help where you grew up. But as an adult, are you necessarily seeking out minority friends? Not really. I guess not. Um, yeah. So in HBCU, the pro is that you will build more, I think, more of a community that will sustain outside of college. Um, and I think that can help you in your career. It can help you in your social life, especially if you pledge like a sorority or fraternity. In a black sorority or fraternity, I do think that also helps you build community outside of university. I don't think people realize how much those 4 years in college impact your career and impact your social network when you become an adult. Um, so I do think that for a black student, an HBCU might be a better choice. Another pro is that they tend to give you a full ride. More than likely, if you're a good student and you have a decent GPA, you'll probably get a full ride. You're probably more likely to get a full ride to an HBCU than you will a PWI. And then also, it's probably more affordable. I know Spelman's expensive though. I think so is Morehouse. But a lot of HBCUs are more affordable. So when it comes to affordability, I think that helps. But they also have a lot of scholarships that you can get. I think more so at an HBCU, because my mom, she didn't have to pay any money to go to Russ College. She got a full scholarship. So you're more likely to, I think, get not have to pay for college at all if you go to an HBCU. Um, and so financially, that's a pro. I think community wise, that's a pro. Career wise, it's a pro. Professor wise, it's a pro. Um, this is something that I honestly thought about too, is that when you go to a PWI and certain people, I think I could tell had more experience being around people of color than not. So I had one professor who was from Louisiana. She was one of my favorites, mainly because you could tell she had been around black people. Like, she was friendly, she was so sweet, she was so kind to me, even though I wasn't even doing well in her class, okay? But she was always really cool with me in a way that I didn't get from other professors sometimes. And I think some of it was because I was very shy, I was very introverted, I was very awkward. Um, as far as my peers go, I thought that they handled it quite well. Like, I thought, considering that most of these people had not been around a black person often, I thought that they were very welcoming, actually. there were a few like microaggressions, but I'm just like, at that point I was still real people pleasery and I just let it slide. But overall, they were cool people, my peers. I think for me, I had a really hard time relating to my professors. Like, there was a significant difference as to how I felt I was treated. And it wasn't because they were mean to me or anything like that. It wasn't like that. But comfortability level wasn't quite there. And I don't know if it was because I was black. I don't know. I felt like my black male counterparts had a more freer. I felt like they definitely were a lot more personable with those two, but it could be because they were more outgoing, they were more extroverted, and also they have the fact that they're males in common. And me being a black female and having white male professors was awkward. Um, like some of them were better than others. I thought like, I'm just gonna name this person. Dr. Dressler was amazing. That guy in another class that I struggled in, but Dr. Dressler was so cool because I never felt like he was weird with me. Like he was talk to me the same way that he talked to anybody else. He talked to me the same way. He's like, "Hi, Miss D. How's it going, Miss D?" And it just made me feel great because I know he also would say that to other students, but it would just be like, "Oh yeah, you really like seeing me. You seem to enjoy my presence." Because some professors, I just felt like y'all are chummy with this one over here, but with me, you're kind of awkward, and I don't understand why that is. But I don't know if it was race related. I just don't know. But the level of comfort wasn't there, and so it did make me feel like I was walking on eggshells for 4 years. And like the first year was the worst. By senior year, it still wasn't great. Like I didn't have a great rapport with my professors, with the exception of the woman who was black woman, and then Miss Dr. O'Quan was really cool. I really loved Dr. Dressler. I like Dr. Brown. He was also very personable with me. Like I felt like they were just, I was just like everyone else. And then I felt like with other professors, it felt awkward. It did. I do think at that time, there hadn't been a lot of black girls, women, who had gone through that program. And if they did, I think they were instrumentalists. But vocalist, when I came into Murray, I was the only black girl, woman in the entire concert choir. And that was for the full year. Freshman year, it was just me. There was Michael and Daniel, but it was just me as far as female, black female. We're talking a choir of about 40 people, and I'm the only black girl in the entire choir for a whole year. And then Daniel's friends Kelsey and Shelby joined the following year, and another girl who joined as well, but she only stayed for like a year, and then I think Kelsey continued. But Kelsey was not a music major. She studied something else. I'm not sure, but I know she's like an education professor now. But she got Murray State 30 under 30. But yeah, I do feel like it was a little awkward, and I think that maybe I should have reached out more to the black students when I was at Murray. The only time I did anything with the black students on campus was I did the Miss Black and Gold pageant, and I actually quit the opera in order to do it. But I was kind of glad I did because it was the one time where I wasn't the only black girl in something. I won Miss Congeniality. The funny thing is just like, I think I might have. It was nothing wrong with having white friends, but I wondered, had I made more friends with the black girls at Murray State, that maybe I would have more outside friends post college. And so I wish I had done both worlds instead of only sticking in my the music world, because I realized that even girls who I didn't spend a ton of time with, I still keep in contact with, who are black women that I went to Murray with. There was this one woman I went to Murray with. She was a senior when I met her as a freshman, and we still keep in contact. So I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like there's something about black women, they stay connected in some shape or form. But yeah, I would think about the pros and the cons of attending a PWI versus an HBCU. There are pros and cons to both. At a PWI, you are exposed to diversity in a way because you're learning more about white people, and a lot of them might end up being your bosses. But I think another pro to going to HBCU is if you struggle with your self esteem at all, I think you need to go to an HBCU. Because, two, part of the reason I didn't feel like I fit in with the black community was because I felt like black was in a box. But when you go to an HBCU, you find people who are like you. So you do find nerds, and you find people who are into opera, and you find people who are into theater, you find people who are into rap, you find people who are into different things. But when you're in your younger years, it's like black is in a box, or used to be. You could only do these things in order to be considered black, or really being black. But at an HBCU, you find everyone. And so I would have been exposed to more black people who probably had my interest, but I just didn't know. I didn't think to go to an HBCU at the time. But there's a part of me that kind of does wish that I did. Doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy my experience at Murray State. I mean, Murray State was a great school. I met Daniel and Michael there. I do feel like I met a wonderful people. I still keep in contact with a few of the families who actually were not associated with my class experience, but I still keep in contact with a woman who led the Bible study there. Her and her husband, like, I still have some type of connection. There was a woman that I did a musical with, and she went to see me perform. So I mean, they also have a sense of community too. And they did make me feel part of their community during my time there, so it's not a dig. I felt like the community, to some extent, I felt like the community made me feel more welcome sometimes than my own professors did, if I'm honest. I just think Murray as a whole is a really nice community. And I don't know how to explain it, but Murray was a great place to be. I think maybe if I had studied a different major, maybe things would have been different for me with my professors. But I think that was the most awkward part of going to a PWI for me personally, was my professors. I think that they can't relate to me. White men are not gonna relate to a black girl. Like, it's just not gonna happen. Like, so it was, and most of my professors were white men. Everybody. With the exception of like 3. And I sought out my history teacher. Because I tried to take world history. I think it was world civilizations. I took it twice and didn't finish because I was bored out of my mind. But I finally went to take Dr. Clardy's class, and I actually enjoyed world civilizations. Dr. Clardy was a black history professor, but he also had an enthusiasm for it that was amazing. And his class was not easy, but I felt like he really enjoyed what he was teaching, and that made it so much more enjoyable. I ended up taking both world civ requirements with him, and I wish I had started with him to begin with, because I probably wouldn't have dropped the class. But I was like, you got to show some interest in what you're doing, because they were boring me to tears. And he had an enthusiasm and an excitement that made me be like, okay, I want to do well in this class. I really want to try my best. And I wasn't getting that from my white male professors in history. I was just like, oh my God, this is really boring. Another one who had so much enthusiasm, Dr. Dressler. Dr. Almquist also was very, he was also very animated. He definitely had a passion for what he was doing. And Dr. Dressler as well, he loved some music history. His test was hard. I think he has one of the most difficult tests that I have taken in life. Like, music history was really hard, and his tests were so hard. Because it just was. I remember I flunked the first test I took in his class, but he was still like, "Hey, Miss T, how's it going?" I loved his personality. It was fun. But I did end up getting like a C, I think, in that class, even after making, I think, a B or a C on the following test. But that first test was worth so much percentage wise that I was gonna get a C in that class because I failed the first one. I think that test was a rude awakening for everybody in that class because it was just a really difficult exam. But he was a cool guy. Um, but yeah, I mean, I also don't know. Like, I never really talked to the other black girls who went through the music department after me. But I feel like I was like the first to go through it out of them. So I feel like my experience was a little different. By the time they came, they already had at least been seen me, and I wasn't completely foreign. Like they, um, but I don't know. I don't know what their experience was. Maybe their experience was better. I'd hope it was. I would hope that it was. I think that it was. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think that if you're thinking about going to college and you're a black student and you're in high school, think about the affordability. Think about going on. No, you need to go on college visits. This is not optional. Please go on college visits. Think outside of the box when it comes to your major and your minor. Do some research. 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 And also think about the pros and cons of going to a PWI and the pros and cons of going to an HBCU and weigh your options. Apply for both. Apply for HBCUs as well as PWIs. Because your community post college has to sustain outside of college. It's supposed to, apparently. But I mean, my friend Jocelyn, she went to Emory, and she and her friends are extremely diverse, and they all still keep in contact. So, I mean, if you're gonna go to a PWI, which I don't know if Emory is considered a PWI, but I think it is. If you're gonna go to a PWI, try to go to one that has a little bit more diversity, because I think Emory is very diverse. So yeah. This has been Southern Girl in the City, and I hope you have a lovely, lovely night. And please, college students, don't take out student loans. Don't do it. Bye.